Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. Gemini Brett here to journey with you into the heavenly harmonies of this aligning Cancer new moon of 2022. You just heard a little bit of the soul song that I created with Eric Deutsch, brilliant master musician, grand pianist. For this particular Cancer new moon, we made an album at the beginning of the year for the 13 new moons of this calendar year, anyway, of 2022. And we'll hear that song in its entirety at the end of this flow, to soundtrack a time for us to drop in, set some intentions, meditate upon, how we would like to open ourselves and align ourselves to the opportunities of the energies of this very powerful heavenly happening of this alignment of the three parts of the philosophy of the whole world: spirit, soul, matter, crescent, circle, and cross, circle, crescent, and cross, sun, moon, and earth, right? Moon coming between the light in our eyes, as she does every month, to begin a new month, and a very powerful one at this time. Before I dive in, let me show you a place where you can go if you would like to listen to these 13 new moon soul songs in full. And that place is my website, although I don't have it yet linked up here, and I should. But here's a little hidden URL for you: geminibrett.com/2022 moon songs. Well, if you click on that picture at the link here, it'll bring you to Eric Deutsch's Bandcamp page, where you can find so many of his amazing offerings. Eric's new record, released in March of this year, 2022, amazing. Check it out. And at Eric's Bandcamp page, and you could also simply search Eric Deutsch. His name is spelled this way, Bandcamp, and get to this page quickly. You'll find this 13 New Moons of 2022 album with our 13 soul songs. They're all about 7 minutes long. You can play any of them right there. You can also click this button, buy digital album, and offer $7 or more, and you'll get all of these songs to download in really high quality WAV format, or you could choose MP3 if you'd like to take up less space, but choose WAV. Get the good high quality recordings, friends, of this beautiful grand piano, the Steinway. And if you buy the record for $7 or more, you will also receive 42 pages of my production notes. So the way this works is I kind of map out a chart, in this case a new moon chart, astroharmonically, according to a very simple system that we use. And then I send Eric a list of notes, the palette that is available to him, along with a story and some kind of harmonic games to play based upon some of the major aspect groups that I see in the chart. And this was so January, so let's find our way through these many new moons of this 2022 that have already aligned to this one that aligns tonight or today, whatever it is for where you are, this Cancer new moon. So here is the chart. And so here are some of the major themes that I saw. And maybe I'll just tune into a past self who wrote these things, I guess sometime in November, December of this year. And maybe I'll get to surprise myself with what I hear. I imagine it's not going to be too different than what I see in this Cancer new moon chart, which aligns where I sit in Richmond, California, Pacific time, 7:52 p.m. We will have the moon in the 7th house, 8th sign here locally, but I've taken kind of a local ascendant and just cast this on a 0 Aries trip where we think of Cancer as Earth's 4th house, right, in this so-called natural zodiac. And we see this really strong square of the new moon, which itself is aligned with the black moon Lilith. So we'll speak a bit about that today, astronomically and energetically. We see this very strong Cancer new moon Jupiter square, right? And we have some reception there because Jupiter is said to be exalted in the sign of Cancer, while the sun is said to be exalted in the sign of Aries, right? And the moon receiving Jupiter. And, you know, if it's a moon nocturnal night chart for you, where you are in the moment of this time, it won't be here. The sun will be in the sky. It'll be daytime still. But for those of you who will be on the night side of this experience, Jupiter is also said to be the triplicity lord, or the ruler of the fire sign. So you'll have that going for you too. Cohabiting with Mars, the sign of Aries, right? At home. Saturn said to be at home in Aquarius, Mercury at home in Gemini. So how are we experiencing all of that kind of essential dignity? I'm wondering if I called any of that out here. Or sun, moon, the new moon with Lilith, especially Moon Lilith. But strong things I'm seeing for sure, like the Mars-Pluto square, its intention, and how that might release to this sextile in the Neptune-Pluto realms, or the strong square of Saturn with the nodes, Uranus at the nodes, and how that itself might release in this Mercury-Saturn trine. I'm guessing I might have called out some of that some time ago when I wrote these things. What else do we see? Like the Mercury square Neptune releasing to Mercury trine Saturn. So anyway, no need to guess. Let me read what I wrote here. So the starry story, the cataclysmic power of ancient creation stories, which remind us of our ancestral roots and help us stay true to our course as human beings. Right, so why would I say all of that? Let's unpack that as we journey into this chart together. And specific group harmonies that I called out based upon strong aspects here. So we see new moon in Lilith squaring Jupiter. I'm also calling out the Venus-Jupiter sextile, which is so strong in this chart, right? So I just missed that. 7 degrees and 16 arc minutes of Gemini, Venus, sextile Jupiter here. So love the image there, right? So a really strong square from the moon sun with Jupiter, and Venus applying for the sextile. And the image that came through after I gave Eric some kind of harmonic instructions to help shape the soul song that he would create, of bass changes between A, B, and C. And in our simple map that we're using, A for Aries, B for Gemini, and C for Cancer. So in this square of the Cancer planets and Aries Jupiter sounds musically like a minor third. And then the sextile is a whole step. And so I just asked him to play that in ascending bass changes. So we'll get to hear that in Eric's song. And the symbol that I sent along with that harmonic instruction to help him I don't know, see a scene that I was hearing in the charts harmony. So a young woman chooses to release the bonds of her wealthy family heritage through practices of ego destroying meditation. When she is finally able to lose herself completely deep in trance, she receives a vision of spirit and is instructed to paint it. This masterpiece makes her and her family famous. Strange universe, this. What the heck is going on there? Gemini, Brett. Yeah, so you can hear that painting in the Venus, right? And some of that kind of transcendental meditation. A lot of that was inspired by Jupiter, but so too this kind of separating from the family bonds. Why those would be bonds of wealth? Well, Venus, Jupiter in this conversation. Um, and yeah, I feel that, that she kind of had to step away from the family name to find her own, and then hers would be that which is most remembered or known. It's interesting. I'm sure I was in that also inspired by this wonderful statement in one of the many documentaries of one of my artistic heroes, who is Robert Nesta Marley, Bob Marley. Um, Marley did not have to purposefully self individuate from his family name. He was just cast aside for all intents and purposes, for what I know, that his father, who was an Englishman, visiting Jamaica, spent some time with his mother, and here came Bob. And later, Bob went to connect to some of his half brothers and sisters of another mother, right? Who are these, like, I guess, English Jamaicans. I'm sure there's a term for that I don't know. Um, but, like white folks. And they denied him. So there's a really wonderful Bob Marley lyric, which is the stone that the builder refused shall always be the head cornerstone, right? Which says so much, but there's something in that. And then beautifully in this documentary, they're interviewing, I think, a stepbrother of Bob Marley, who is one of these other Marleys, who said, "Yeah, we denied his kind of right as a Marley." And pretended he doesn't exist. But of course, he's the one that will always be the Marley moving forward. And I'm sure this thing that I wrote to offer a painting for Eric to see as he played these A, B, C bass changes to bring forth some of the tension and release inherent in this heavenly harmony. I'm sure it was informed through that information I had received from this documentary of a great hero of mine, Bob Marley, who has Venus in Aries, not far from that degree, actually. I was hearing a very different song this morning in relationship to this strong Cancer new moon square with Aries Jupiter cohabiting with Aries Mars and that strong square with Pluto, Chiron between Jupiter and Mars there. I'm thinking of some of the, really powerful energies that are in, like, the political scene based upon the Supreme Court's judgment this week in regards to Roe versus Wade and, abortion. And the song was She's Leaving Home by Paul McCartney and the Beatles. Whoa. I need to share, speaking of sun, Aries and Hawk. A red-tailed hawk just flew by right above Sacred Mountain over here, Mount Tamalpais, holding something that it had just successfully hunted. Maybe it was a groundhog, something like this, just clutched in its talons. And flying south, pretty close to where the sun is now. I'm recording this with the sun at 1:02 p.m. in this moment on June 28th, 2022, this day of the Cancer new moon, which has yet to form. But the moon and sun are right at the midheaven right now. Right, so we're in our king tides. It's high tide, like here right now, and that hawk with its prey just flying right into the sun. I'm looking at a chart on my phone. Okay. Right. So why she's leaving home by the Beatles? It's from their Sgt. Pepper's record, right? And specifically, like certainly a Paul McCartney song. One of these songs, these storytelling songs from Paul that his writing partner John would call one of Paul's grandma songs. Paul born during the day of Jupiter. I think maybe it was the day of Moon and the hour of Jupiter, but either way, with this Cancer Jupiter exalted, we hear these kind of stories from Paul about families and culture and people, and Jasmine and Molly singing in the marketplace, and Eleanor Rigby and all the things. But in that song, she's leaving home. It's the parents can't understand. We sacrificed ourselves for her. We did everything for every breath we took. Like everything we did was for her, and there she is. And we wake up to this note. Well, one of the reasons why that came in is not only this feeling of the tension in an Aries-Cancer square, right? So Aries individuation, cardinal fire energy, right? Who am I? Is my spark, and then the Cancer cardinal energy of like, where am I coming from? Where am I rooted? What is the soil from which I sprout? Um, and that's oftentimes family, right? So you get like my house and the neighborhood is kind of like a Cancer Capricorn thing. Or we could say like my neighborhood and the city, Cancer Capricorn. So you can go to all these different levels. So interestingly, in this, recent Supreme Court decision, now there's no longer a federal law protecting an individual right, and so much of the individual experience will depend upon the state, right? So here's a different kind of octave of the hierarchies, if you will, where the federal would be the kind of Capricorn, and then the state would be the Cancer thing, or maybe the state is Capricorn, and how my particularly county like plays with those state rules would be Cancer, or the county and the city, or the city and the neighborhood, and the neighborhood and the home, or the home and how we individually move within it. You see how that works? And so the Aries-Cancer square here really is, in a sense, like the necessity to individuate from the home. And it feels like away from, but as I always love to say, as I'm learning, like as much as you might want to or might not want to, like you will not grow away from the soil into which you were planted. You grow of it, and we grow out and we grow up, but we grow from, and so sometimes we don't want to belong to a family, a home, a state, a country, a culture, and it doesn't agree with who we are. Well, that really kind of forms the opportunity for breaking out. So, I mean, I also hear this, and I'm not sure if I mentioned in this limited list of things here, this Mars-Saturn sextile, but I feel it there as well. And in this way, a little bit more of agreement in a sextile than the challenges of the squares. Like this is like, oh my gosh, they raised me to be this, but I'm something different. And if I choose to fully be me, like it's going to excommunicate me or have me banished from the family or something like that. But again, if I choose to like break away and go find my own name, then actually I might be doing more for those who tell me, this is what it is to be a Franklin or something. Like, no, this is what it is to be my version of a Franklin. And suddenly that's what the Franklins are known to be, or what the Marleys are known to be. And so that's the image that I was trying to convey here. And we'll hear it, I'm sure, in Eric's song. And I imagine we'll feel it in this month that's aligning with the moon sun synod they're meeting tonight right? This whole month ahead. So we'll look at some of the significant things that are going to be going down during the month, but also just really tuning into the structure of this chart, which is like a seed to sprout over the month to come. So retrograde Pluto, retrograde Saturn, retrograde Neptune, and direct Mars in a semi-sextile string. Well, that's a fun one. I'll say, intending to create songs um, for these charts, like has me working with this brilliant musician, Eric Deutsch, who we played music together for many years. And Eric created a song for an album for my niece Whitney to be born to years ago. I was trying to think of the right gift to give her for her coming into this world. She's my eldest niece, and she was to be born at home. And I flew to Colorado, where Eric then lived, and we had a really wonderful and long night. And the next morning, woke up early and found our way to a recording studio in Denver. And I guess produced his work at the solo piano. I mean, really, he just played a few different songs. I had asked for like a bunch of different covers, and the record's great. We called it the Baby Sessions, and we hear like from Tom Waits and Bjork and some old gospel songs, and from some of our teachers like Art Landy and Ron Miles. May he rest in peace. And many of Eric's own wonderful compositions. And I just sat in the booth, like trying to recover from our night before, saying things like, "Hey, yeah, do that Tom Waits one, and like take a walk in the woods," Anyway, a really beautiful record came out that I've listened to so many times. And that was really like at the very, I don't know, that was like, I guess, the spark of this flame that's now developed into the Soul Song project, where we've done like more than 300 songs now, mostly songs of natal charts. I'll show you, by the way, at my website at geminibrett.com. If you click on astrology sessions here, and I don't know how long we'll be doing this, by the way. Eric will soon get a huge gig and probably be gone too much for us to be able to do this much. But Song of the Soul is where you could click and order a song of your own birth chart, or give a gift to a friend or loved one, or for a child that's coming in, or something like this. Where did I want to be? Oh, right here. So one of the things, and why I got into that is, it's one thing to do like a chart, right? Another thing to do 13 charts for the 13 new moons of 2022. Usually we'll have 12, right? Every third or fourth year we'll have 13 new moons in a calendar year, but which calendar should we use? And I'm also needing to find some variety from one song to the next. So a lot of the things, there were really similar shapes in the preceding new moons of this year. So trying to find distinct shapes from one chart to the next, given that this was going to be produced as an album, right? Like of 13 songs, just not a song. And so here we are in a semi-sextile string. Like, what a trip. So I'm looking at Pluto at 28 and Saturn at 25 and Neptune at 26 and Mars at 26 of consecutive signs. And that's going to bring this in this map that we're using, which is just, for those of you who speak music, like a chromatic map configured in such a way that the 12 notes of the octave, or the 12 keys in Western harmony, are assigned to the 12 zodiac signs, with A equals Aries, and then we just increase chromatically from there. So Taurus is B flat or A sharp, and Gemini is B, etc. Right? So having Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, right? And one of the reasons why I would have called that out, by the way, is just kind of the strength of Saturn and Aquarius, of Neptune and Pisces, of Mars and Aries. And it's cool to see, like, in a square, such a strong square, like a Mars-Pluto square, which is going to come into that shape. There's also these places in between. So it's also going to honor harmonically in ways the Neptune-Pluto sextile, the Mars-Saturn sextile, which is a really significant part of this chart. Let me read what I said about them, and I'll probably add a little bit more that I'm not seeing written here. So retrograde Pluto, retrograde Saturn, retrograde Neptune, and direct Mars, semi-sextile string. So I mean, I'm calling out their directions. I mean, frankly, specifically for astrology students like you and me who are going to listen to these songs and want to understand something about where I'm getting these harmony messages and symbols from. But it's not just Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, Mars. It's like direct Mars. Well, Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, all retrograde. Now, Neptune is just retrograded. And there's a key for that. The outer planets retrograde around the time that the sun finds itself to the opening trine of their particular cycle. So sun is recently trined Saturn, for example, trined Pluto when in the sign of Taurus. And the further from Earth, the less that, trine thing speaks. And Mars kind of plays by his own rules. But Mars is now starting to slow down to retrograde, which will happen with the sun probably in Virgo, maybe in late Leo. No, I mean Virgo, maybe even Libra. Anyway, I don't want to get lost there. Retrograde, 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 direct. And this interesting string in these degrees. Um, and so what I asked Eric to do musically is to like fall, like high to low on these notes from that's like Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, but then move forward or up from Aries. And the symbol, a pole vaulter takes 3 small steps backwards, then charges ahead. For us, like energetically as human beings in this particular experience, I'm glad this is not something that I would see if I wasn't referring to these notes over here. But yeah, I think there's something really important in that, and especially given the truth that like if we are individuating for something, like know what you are individuating from. Many astrologers think of Aries as the first sign, and it's shown in this so-called natural zodiac or zero Aries chart wheel design. You'll see in these charts that I used for these new moons of 2022, instead of doing that, although interestingly, I did here. Huh. What I meant to do, I did that here too. Interesting. And these maybe I did that every time. And the little ones here, you can see what I chose instead was a Cancer rising chart. So we get that image of like Cancer first for the Cancer new moon. And that was what we'll see here in the Gemini new moon chart. Gemini on the first. But then on the big charts, oh, I see, because I wanted them to easily be compared to this chromatic map that we're using where I put A with Aries, right? I put Aries on the first. Yeah. Genius. I celebrate you, past self from so many months ago. Anyway, Aries is the first when Aries is rising. But, Cancer is the first when Cancer is rising. Or here in California, as this moment aligns, we'll have Sagittarius rising, the galactic center rising. So act locally, but think globally. And the zero Aries wheel is a very global wheel, because this point of the tropical zodiac is literally due east from the center of Earth, where we are all one. That's a long story as to the sacred astronomy behind that. Maybe you'll take my word for it, or maybe you'll take my class. But either way, I can very much confirm that that is true. That's like the astronomical roots for this idea of the so-called natural zodiac, where we put what I'll call the global ascendant at the chart's ascendant. I think we lose a lot in kind of the modern idea that the first is Aries, is Mars. It has strength and many tales to tell, but there's 12 different eyes to look through. What if Taurus is on the rise and the first is Taurus, friends? So, but I will often refer to the tropical signs as Earth's houses. And Cancer being the fourth has so much to do with home, roots, family, parents, but it can also be motherland, and the rules of the motherland. Like Capricorn tends to be more like those larger structures, like a nation and its laws and whatnot. But like when we here at the house, when Koa's like, need water. For a while, I was like, hey, okay, and then it was like, what do you say? And if we don't hear please, like it's not gonna go down, right? And then eventually it's like, dude, get up and get it yourself. Which is actually when the Cancer Aries squares can go really well, right? So you don't want the bird in your nest forever, right? And we need to also understand that because they will not be, we want to empower them to know how to do their own laundry and cook for themselves and these kinds of things. And there's something in the Aries Cancer square that not only like demands that we individuate from the family and its rules, but that we raise the children in such a way that they will be strong enough to be on their own. And like just having that in the inherent code provides this tension that doesn't have to necessarily be a bad thing, right? So, well, what about Aquarius, Pisces, or Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries? I'll just tell a quick tale of like, the rules that you're playing by, right? And what about the rules of the power system? That's something of this long journey of Pluto through Capricorn, which began, in 2009. And Pluto's going to move into Aquarius very soon. He'll come back into Capricorn for some unfinished business, but then that's it for our lifetimes. And if many, many generations, because Pluto is a 250-year, 248-year trip, right? As many of you know, Pluto's returning to where Pluto was at the time that the United States was, in a sense, first declared to be a thing with the Declaration of Independence in 1776. And yeah, we're seeing some very interesting things here. So Capricorn in many ways can represent the rules. And you can't play a game without rules. But if the rules are ones that you do not like to play by, then change games. So leave that scene, right? If you do feel that the rules like work for you, then play the game. But in that play, you're going to innovate. So I think of Aquarius often as like the revolutions and revelations that will bring new insight, and let me say like the revelations that will bring new intricacies to like the game in which you play with rules that you like. So if you're playing a game whose rules you dig, or if you're living in a culture that works for you, or in however you've surrounded yourself in life, like do you have team, is this the right structure for you? If so, yeah, like innovate, right, for the sake of the hive. If the rules suck and it's not the place for you, and I think a lot of us have been asked to interview that potential more and more recently in the last few years, then get out of there. So split, leave the hive. That's a really hard thing to do. So this can be revolution or revelation depending on how it like is interacting with the Capricorn truth and with like the power grab and the corporatocracy and all of these different things that we see in this Pluto Capricorn, and the more awareness of it. It's not like it hasn't been here for a long time, but more awareness of it is causing different shapes, and we're feeling so much of this polarity, which is also something that happens from one sign to the next. Even if you have innovations for this game whose rules you dig, it doesn't mean you're meant to like announce them to the elders who wrote the rules right away. In fact, you're probably going to ruffle some feathers. And you want to learn to trust your intuition, right? So if you have awareness of a change that needs to be made, even if it's a change that you can see very clearly is going to benefit, like, culture, um, be careful voicing that to the ones whose very job is to keep the traditions alive and rooted. So, come to them on a happy day, not on a sad day. Come to them and ask instead of tell. Maybe even come to them and help them see that the innovation is their idea, because it was setting forth, right, when they first kind of planted the seed so long ago, right? And that takes intuition. That takes that kind of development of the Pisces compassion and sharing the heart, one love. And so when we can intuitively feel that, then we know when the right time is, and that's Aries. So that's all here for me, and I love like the retrogradeness. I know a lot, like there's a lot of fear around retrograde motion. I mean, specifically for outer planets like this, who spend a lot of time retrograde. I mean, gosh, for Pluto and Neptune, it's almost half the time. It's like 5 months a year or more. For Saturn, about four, right? So, um, but as a planet's changing directions, and Neptune just has, right? And even Mars, and especially Aries Mars, who likes fast, is actually starting to slow down. You can see that when the sun squares Mars. Um, but there's something about retrograde motion for me, which is like look back, or for Neptune, who just stationed, like change directions, right? And so there's gonna that weirdness of like changing a whole like Neptunian or spiritual or visionary direction, you know, like these challenges to compassion. And it's amazing to see just eruptions of religiosity around this Supreme Court decision of this week, right? I mean, like on the social media spaces, just the the complete like attacks of you know Bible beaters and the Bible itself or Christianity that I've seen, right, from those who are like flexing the muscles of their religion, right, of like atheism or scientism or what, and also from the other side, right, around this pro-choice, pro-life like divide that's been so strong and so politicized. It's been interesting to witness, and there's something about that Neptune retrograde in Pisces that speaks of this. There's also something about Moon Lilith, which I'm going to speak with you more about at the end here. Okay. Uranus node can be in that conversation too. So, looking at the ancient rooted power structures that might need a change, that might need a reform, which is actually a beautiful Saturn Aquarius word, right? Form and reformation. Reformation does not tend to happen without revolution, but revolution doesn't have to be like so fast, right? Sometimes we need that spark, but the greatest change will happen if we honor systems that will last and try to work with the old traditions. But but this Mars Pluto thing, it's a fight. I mean, while we have an individuation in this Cancer Aries, look, Moon and Sun actually move faster than Jupiter. So this is Moon squared Jupiter. This is Sun squared Jupiter. In fact, Moon carried this tension of a Jupiter square to the Sun. Um, and actually, I could even see that, and I think I wrote that in this note here about like this woman, like through ego destroying meditation, right? Like, is finally able to lose herself completely. Is Aries the loss of self? I don't know, but Jupiter and Aries, it kind of plays differently. But there's also something about coming into Cancer. So this is like kind of coming back to our roots. So this painting, which is in this Venus here, and this art, in painting the word, telling the stories, like it actually brings us in a sense back to the family, and brings a new name. There's something in the Cancer intention of the month in general. The moon's home, the sun is there every year, and every year we have at least one, rarely two, sometimes a blue moon, an old school definition of a blue moon, two new moons in the sign of Cancer. But every year we will have this Cancer new moon. When's the last time they were perfectly square Jupiter? You're going to be looking through a lot of charts backwards to find something like that. All right. Anyway, there's this intention actually to come back to home, back to family, back to nurturing, back to Cancer. But what is that? Who makes those rules? Back to our manners and mannerisms. But what are those? Like, who gets to teach that? And there's something about the one who's like gone out on the quest and found the elixir in the weird world, coming back to bring it back to culture, bring it back to the tribe. There's something very strongly encoded in this chart, even in the tensions of the chart, that speaks more there. So She's Leaving Home is a song that I heard, but maybe it's more like She's Coming Home. There's a Steel Pulse song I'm hearing in my head. That's like the prodigal son, something in that nature. Where the tension is and the separation is, it's more like breaking out of like these the power structures of culture, and that's really strong in this Mars Pluto square. And I'm sure I would have called that out alone if I wasn't looking for some more varieties based upon other new moons of the year. But at the same time, it's really interesting to see these kind of like steps of polarity we're taking from one sign to the next. Mars is said to be exalted in this degree of Capricorn, right? In 28 Capricorn. Um, I'm just pausing to think, wait, is that actually Mars exalted in 27 Capricorn? No, that's Venus, 27 Pisces. I'm almost positive Mars at 28 Capricorn, which is this 27 plus is the 28th degree. So this, applying, and it's about to happen. It's like anticipation, right? Mars has sextiled Saturn, and it's like maybe it's given some some like this is like Mars like talking to this coach in the boxing ring. It's like telling him like about remembering to breathe and to be innovative, right? Because he's gearing up to get back into the ring for this kind of big fight here. And Mars Pluto, and Pluto in that exalted degree, actually I think there's some kind of generosity there. Some have models where Pluto rules Aries. So there would, I guess, if I to use a traditional term, like a very modern system that most don't employ anyway, there's some like generosity here of an Aries Mars and a Capricorn Pluto, or mixed reception. That's a kind of a roll of the astro dice, or getting pretty far out on the thin twig at the end of an astro branch. But yeah, how can they work together? And sometimes, like if we want there to be a return to retrograde ways of a more powerful foundation, Capricorn, of like true like earth wisdom, then we gotta like bring the flame, bring the light into some of these shadowy places. And sometimes that's gonna like start a fight, but we want to find balance and harmony on the other side. Still, if you can see where your world is corrupt, right? Yes, revolt, but choose your timing wisely. And actually, sometimes the Reformation can happen without blood. Yeah. All right, let's continue on. So a pole vaulter taking 3 small steps backwards, then charges ahead. It's also like, know where you're coming from. Take some time. Like, the other image is the cars. Like, has a bunch of these, right, where you like roll them back, click, 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 and then let them go, and they shoot off. And if you're willing to go backwards a bit, then you can really go forward with steam. And I feel that in that shape, that agreement. Speaking of forward with steam, Mercury is starting to move fast again, moving forward, having recently stationed direct in the sign of Gemini. Mercury is said to call her home. Mercury square Neptune to Mercury trine Saturn. Yeah, I knew I would call out that shape, even though, this is not a very strong square. Well, it will be. I mean, actually, especially given Saturn's retrograde and much faster retrograde than Neptune right now, Mercury will first trine Saturn and then square Neptune. Um, I think we're feeling some of that in culture right now. I'm going to leave that there. Do with that what you will. But you know, there's a challenge here in optimism and dreaming and religiosity. What is the truth? Is there only one truth? Can we look at both sides of the things? You know, it's really alive right now. I mean, God, these last few years, have anything been more polarizing? And the answer is yes, always, but now it's really coming up. And the ways that we're seeing, I mean, you know, coming back to the family, I mean, that's going to be very literal for some of you out there. These last few years, like by the commandments of media, you know, you have to burn that bridge and separate from the family that you came from. They don't even know how checked out they are, you know, or you have to disown that child because he's playing on the wrong websites, or you're that parent because they're nuts and they're looking into this weird shit like astrology, you know, like that. Like there's been so much pain and separation. And I mean, some of it, like the glory of finally allowing myself to walk away from a structure that just doesn't work, never did, could never honor who I was, always drained my energy. You know, that's a very important Cancer conversation of, are we over watering the plants to the point where we have no water to quench our own thirst, you know? And so, you know, I've seen, and I've kind of held space in a lot of readings this year for folks who have like lost elders or lost children, because of, frankly, because of like, you know, philosophical or even political reasons. And sometimes like, good, wash my hands of you. And, you know, finally I can find now that I'm not like, you know, trapped inside like the cage of my own like blood family. Now I can finally open up to my soul family, which is a huge part of the conversation when we see Cancer aligned in this way. But you know, there's a lot of pain there too. And it's much more beautiful to be able to walk outside and like, so kind of gently close the screen door so we can still speak from other sides of our realities than slam the door behind with never another word, you know? I mean, I'm not saying that that isn't the right path for some, for many maybe. Um, but for some, I feel a lot of pain. It used to be we didn't have to let differences of opinions separate us or ostracize us. It used to be we were allowed to ask questions about anything. It used to be we were proud of fighting for the right to ask questions or state opinions about anything. What the fuck happened? That's in this chart in a huge way. And things are coming up to surface now. Right? Like, so an interesting example is those who have screamed "my body, my choice" for decades, um, maybe lost their right to do so if they were also supporting a very different scene that said you don't have the right to choose what you put into your body because of what? Culture, country, compassion, concern. Do you see how that is? So this is a chart. I mean, I remember looking at this earlier in the year and thinking, "Ooh, we're going to be going back to something." And there's literally like, let's read the starry story again. The cataclysmic power of ancient creation stories. I mean, I'm literally talking about something born out of disaster, comet strike, big bang, you know, which remind us of our ancestral roots and help us stay true to our course as human beings. Yeah, so again, we don't grow away from, well, you'll never break away from that soil in which you were seeded, whether it was so moist and nutrient rich or just barren, dry, and lacked all of that love, you know? Like that is your root. And the more we can actually honor where we come from, right? The more we can grow into who we are meant to be. And sometimes that means like running away at full speed, you know, from that small town mentality or something like that, or that corrupt big city mentality or something like that, right? To each our own path. But still, like, that's where you come from. I mean, you might never know. You might have been left on the doorstep of an orphanage, and yet that is in your root story. And what about the older roots than all of that? So, you know, perhaps you live in France. Like, when did that begin? How has it changed shape? Right. I mean, that thing about kind of motherland is in this conversation too. So, Mercury square Neptune to Mercury trine Saturn. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I just can't quite remember how to say it. Expect that feeling. There's an important piece here, which is it's not just about I can't remember. It's like I'm not sure I'm allowed to. I'm not sure who I will hurt if I say something this way or that way. I'm not sure I'm allowed to like speak words from both sides of a thing. Like I might completely ostracize myself or victimize somebody, make them feel like they don't belong. Like, oh my gosh, oh, should I just be hush? Well, this is a very visible Mercury, and that trine with Saturn, I says like, you know, know where you are coming from, but also be willing to look back, right? And that square of compassionate consideration to maybe give a little bit of pause or slow the way we share word doesn't have to be bad. But if you feel like you're trying to speak, but you're like in a dream underwater and nothing will come out, that's likely this strength of this forming Mercury Pisces square. And you can look at this chart and say, oh, dude, that's like 7 degrees, 6.5 degrees out. Like, this is just, look at that Mars, Pluto, like, that's a square. And yes, but Mercury moves fast, faster than Mars. And Mercury will come in and perfect this square, certainly. In fact, just like the Mars Pluto is co-applying, because while Mars moves faster, he's coming into the square, and Pluto's moving retrograde back into the square. Same thing with Mercury, Neptune. I see it as actually a very strong shape of this chart. And I said before, he's going to trine Saturn first, just as Mars sextiled Saturn before the square with Pluto. Mercury will trine Saturn before the square with Neptune. Saturn's like a very key figure in this chart. And he's, for the most part, seeming to offer beneficial contributions. But we cannot unwrap the gifts of Saturn unless we slow down, even in Saturn's Aquarian nature, which sounds like a contradiction. Uranus in Taurus is a similar thing. For those of who relate Aquarius to that planet, Uranus, that revolutionary one, like Taurus is not about change. So even with Saturn retrograde in Aquarius squaring the nodes and Uranus receiving the retrogradation of the North Node in Taurus, there's really something about like, oh, if you want true change, go back to the old ways. All right, but on this page we read Mercury, K2, Pluto, Yod. That's fun. So I love these structures to offer to Eric because in the chromatic system we use, it creates the musical thing called the 1-5-4. Okay, like so B to E to G flat. G flat is, or F sharp is the fifth of the key of B, and E is the fourth, and that's just a really beautiful sound, like groove. It's a weird place to have a yod kind of harmonically consonant, I guess, which 1-4-5s are. Um, But I don't think we need to run away from the power of that. I mean, it's interesting. Look at how wide of a net I'm allowing Mercury to cast in these transmissions. It's definitely not what I see first when I look at the chart. And I didn't know when I went live. I opened this up just right before. I was like, oh, I should see what I like wrote because I want to play this song. Um, and it's cool. Like when I work on these charts to help guide Eric's creation of a musical version of a moment. I see charts or hear charts and express charts in very different ways, and I'm like astrologically inclined to. I mean, that's always consistently changing and updating, anyways. I study new paradigms or just learn more. Um, but the way that I'm starting to like kind of experience these charts musically the way that I was before this adventure with Eric began, and especially now we've done hundreds of these things, it's coming back into how I sit with clients and delineate charts. There's things that I'm kind of hearing musically that's definitely not the places I would first go when I just open a chart wheel. And cool, because how many Cancer new moon sessions will you hear this month? Hopefully, this is helping us get into some structures that are maybe less seen. So Mercury retrograde Pluto, retrograde Scorpio, K2, Yod. Okay. A mystical traveling bard arrives to sing the legends of the ancestors. Yeah, I guess I'm feeling this, which remind us of our ancestral roots and help us stay true to our course as human beings. I'm feeling that a lot in these retrogrades of Saturn, of Capricorn, Pluto, the node here in Scorpio. I mean, I don't think at the time I was putting myself into that mix, but I have my North node is at 2151 Scorpios. I've just had last night my nodal reversal. So, it's hard to take ourselves out of the charts, especially when we're not intending to, right? So I feel like some of my own connections at this personal time of my own kind of astrological initiation and experience is creeping into that one. But anyway, a mystical traveling bard arriving to sing the legends of the ancestors is never a bad thing. So significant shifts during the lunation that I called out at the time that I wrote this is Mercury moving into Cancer. For Kazemi, Mercury will literally go behind the sun in Cancer and then into the sign of Leo, right? So during this month ahead, we're going to have Mercury Gemini, Mercury Cancer, Mercury Leo, also Mercury visible as a morning star that's happening now, especially in the southern hemisphere with this Mercury 19 degrees from the sun. He's just going under the beams again, and then Mercury invisible on the way through. So Mercury going to find the messages in the hidden other worlds and lining behind the sun in Cancer. He's currently what I call a Gemini Cancer cycle. And in that sense, it's like, oh, I want to explore the truth and wonder of youth, but I cannot do that without being initiated in the faraway places of Cancer. Again, like something I've just said again and again, I'm seeing this chart in so many ways. Like if I don't honor where I'm coming from, even if honoring that means the pain of my youth, then I cannot ever find my truth. Um, all right, so Venus will ingress Cancer. Mars ingresses Taurus, a sign where the moon is said to be exalted. Chiron stations retrograde. And Neptune has just stationed retrograde. So a lot of other things are going to be happening, but it's interesting. We see in this chart, kind of water sign for the new moon, right? But we see air, fire, air, right? The other visible planets. So when I say we see, I mean it. Okay. So we will still have the Aquarian air for Saturn's travel this whole month and on for some time. We will have an Aries Jupiter for this whole time, but Mars is going into Taurus. Mercury is going into Cancer. Venus is going into Cancer. Like the chart's going to get a lot more nocturnal, a lot more grounded. And so there's all this energy right now, right? This like kind of fire air thing. And the moon meets the sun in Cancer and very far from the earth, which I'm going to get back into. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, I know you're hot. right? I know you have a lot to say, but slow down, right? Like, don't burn bridges, like, walk across them, right? So, yeah, I feel like that's a good amount of the energy this month, which I call it Cancer Capricorn month because Cancer new moon, Capricorn full moon. And maybe we'll take a minute to look at that full moon chart too. Actually, let me show it to you now. So here's the sequence of steps to get here most quickly in Astro Gold software. Thank you, Astro Gold, for this amazing software. And there is the coming Capricorn full moon on July 13th, 2022, 11:38 a.m. Pacific time. You'll find that Saturn has only moved less than a degree, and Jupiter about a degree in the other direction, right? But Mars has moved 10 degrees and is now in Taurus. Venus at the time of the full moon still in Gemini, so it's going to be a bit till she comes into Cancer. And now here's Mercury trying to get behind the Sun in the sign of Cancer. And we'll see Sun trining Neptune in this month, so let's type that in there. We'll see Sun opposing Pluto in this month, so definitely type that one in there. Like, wait, is there more things written? No. Like, those are big deals, right? And you'll see at the time of the full moon, the Capricorn full moon applying to Pluto, but having just recently visited Uranus through trine, so you get this wedge shape. And it says like more Earth, more slow. Moon will then, the sextile Neptune conjoin Pluto. So these invisible connections are so important. But for me, I'm most interested in how they come in through our visibility. And I like these Gemini Aquarius trines. It's like insights that will come through, but now that we're in Cancer realm, right? I mean, it's different than like the Gemini new moon that preceded this time. There's something about these like Mercury, Saturn, and Venus, Saturn trines. Let me show those to you. So Mercury trine Saturn is that didn't seem to work. Transiting Mercury, trine transiting, Sun. Because that can't happen. Mercury can only get 28 degrees away from the light. So let's try that. All right, Mercury trine Saturn, July 2nd. All right, Moon's now in Leo. Carrying the light of, it looks like, of Venus to Mercury, but it will actually be Venus to Saturn because Mercury's swimming by. And then let's look at the Venus-Saturn trine. It's going to be much later in the month, July 12th, which is before the full moon, right? That Venus-Saturn trine. And there you go. That's kind of same figure. Venus trine Saturn, while Venus square Neptune. Venus quincunx Pluto. So really looking at that Pluto, Saturn, Neptune here. And yeah, I mean, I think the overall teachings, especially Mars slowing down and coming into Taurus, like Mars is starting to get slower and slower. He's still moving relatively fast, but like by the next new moon in Leo, which is square Mars, I don't know, Astro Gold still claiming fast Mars, but this is definitely Mars starting to slow down to station. Mars will station in the sign of Gemini. Let's look at when that is. Mars is going to spend 7 months in Gemini. Oh wow, and not retrograding actually until the sun is in Scorpio, so even later than I was dreaming into earlier. Anyway, let's be here now. I think I've shared most of what I intend to say here. I did want to speak a little bit about Lilith. I'm gonna bring in Ishel here. This is a really wonderful painting by Aloria Weaver and David Heskin, who were a painting team for a long time. And this is a painting of Ishel, who's a Maya goddess. It makes me wonder, so I'm just called to see that, what's happening astrocartographically in the Mayan lands during this new moon. And yeah, the south node, right? So history and heritage is at the midheaven here in kind of Mayan lands. I've been to a temple of Ishel here in Cozumel, where the node will be on the ninth house side, south node in the ninth. But interestingly, this is a very local thing. These are local space lines. In the moment of this new moon, the sun will be pointing very close to that place. So maybe that's why I'm feeling Ishel, but also because she's a goddess of the moon. So when we think Cancer, in that place, Sangiovese, which is this temple of Ishel in Cozumel, it was like a trade center, like many different, I guess, city centers and even peoples from far away. Like there's evidence of materials from Brazil there and from the what we now call like North American lands there in Cozumel. Like there were people coming from far away to do commerce and trade, and there's something that's very moon there and very Cancer. I mean, in some senses, Cancer is just what's happening in your own home, but again, like we can octave out, and so one who's wet, like moon, moist, that's going to take those hot grains of sand, like Aries, and say, no, 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 you're not each just some individual, like we're all one, like the wave comes in and makes those sands into this one clay. So that's a very important truth of the moon, the way that she connects one and another. So Ishel is like a rainbow goddess, and a moon goddess and a goddess of fertility, but also like fierce. You can see jaguar here in this beautiful painting by Aloria Weaver and David Heskins. But I mean, the most important intention of this painting is the trying to like resolve the pain that these two were feeling as they were exploring, you know, what some call contact, but more appropriately, like conquest or genocide or something like this. I will say I was down in Mexico doing a retreat with my dear friend and maestra, Ursula Stockter, um, right at the equinox time, right? So Sun in Aries a few months ago. And I went, it was so random. It was the equinox, and I was at a new friend's place in Cancun who kind of responded to this thing I had written on Facebook of like, God, I'll teach this class as soon as I have a decent internet connection because I was just traveling around. And she said, hey, come do it at my place in Cancun. And so I did. It was really sweet of them. And so I did a Aries broadcast for my Astrology school. And then I was on my way to this retreat in Tulum that was to begin the next morning. There was an evening event-ish that I missed because on the way, it was equinox, and I really wanted to find a place to pray, and so for me, that's like get to a pyramid site, get to an ancient site, and so I'm like on the mapping device and found this, like, wow, this thing's really close and it's cheap. It was like 77 pesos or something. Little did I know that when I got there, it was $77, and the place is called Ishkaret, and it's like, oh, I mean, so I'll just say, like, I got to the ticket booth having realized that, oh my God, I'm like at like an amusement park. And oh, that's not 77 pesos, like that's $77. And do I want to do this, especially considering this place is going to close soon? But I also wanted to just honor that things brought me there, and okay, right? And so I went in, and I mean, they had told me that, hey, there'll be a demonstration of the Mayan ball game, and that really excited me because I've always wondered how they could like hit rubber balls off of their hips into this goal up high. If you've seen the ball game at the Mayan sites, you may have wondered the same thing. So I was like, all right, and I went in and I found this really beautiful pyramid site and nobody was there. They were like just walking by on their way to like the water ride or whatever. I mean, it was like literally in an amusement park. Um, and I was there and I was like kind of setting some intentions and trying to sit with my own personal frustrations about, what I see as like, the just ruining these ruins, like, I mean, literally like, scores and scores of tombs or burials have been like, frankly desecrated there and dug up, and now there's an amusement park on like a burial grounds and a sacred site, and so I'm trying to still my judgments of all of this, because who am I? Like, I'm an outsider coming to this place, and part of it was healed by this amazing howler monkey. Okay, so I decided, like, because this particular area of the park was closing, I got there late, that I would maybe, don't tell, okay, I wouldn't say this publicly on YouTube or anything, but I I thought maybe if I just sneak over here as they close this part of the park, then I'll get to spend some time like in silence, like in this old Mayan site, and really align myself to my intentions for this year to come, because the sun had just moved into Aries. It's a very significant scent of beginnings. And I was on the way to this retreat and wanted to kind of align my energetic and prepare for that and all the things. But when I kind of snuck off, my path brought me to a place in the amusement park, which is a zoo. And here is this beautiful howler monkey. Let me put this away and I'll just rap with you for a second. Like, like so amazing. And hanging by his feet, and just like swinging around, and noticed me noticing him, and jumped up onto this vine or rope from which he was hanging, and then ran down that rope and kind of screaming a bit at me, checking me out, and got pretty close and ran up into this thing and grabbed some leaves and just started kind of eating, like almost like violently, like looking at me, like sizing me up in a sense. And I'm just looking, I was like, wow, like this is so amazing. And the place where the howler monkeys were kept was huge, and they had all this stuff to play with, and like really wonderful different houses they could be in. And it didn't seem in any way that they were caged, that would probably be more like caged by, hey, we give you food. So why would you want to leave? Like that kind of trip, maybe. Anyway, so all this stuff's going through my head, but I'm just like making eyes with this powerful being. And I don't know, maybe an hour went by. And as that hour is ticking, I'm just like, having already seen like a place where there were deer, in like in an entrapment, but like not some tiny, like terrifying, sad cage thing. Besides, maybe that all are. Um, but here, like, and oh God, I forgot the name of this amazing being. Like, I had seen some cool animals on the way, right? But this was just something else. And I mean, I realized it's what I was there for. And just spent some time, and this howler monkey ended up getting closer and closer and was just doing like the coolest things. And I mean, I was taking some pictures and some video and stuff, but for the most part I like put that stuff away and just sat in silence and just observed, and tried to open myself to the teachings, and what in this is Aries, like how is this the Aries sun, because that's what was happening in the moment. And I always tried to, like, ask Earth about what's happening in her heavens. And, her teachers are Earthlings, like Howler Monkey. So anyway, that went down. And then I I was like, okay, they told me this Mayan ball game thing's gonna be at 8 p.m. Like, let's go find that. And I asked at an information booth, they said like, oh, that's part of like the show. So I'm like, oh great, now I'm gonna have to go to like some like big like commercial show, right? So anyway, I go there. Eventually, like 20 minutes into it, I'm like texting Anna, like, we have got to bring Koa to this place. Like hours before, I'm just cursing it as like the grossest example of like colonial, like amusement park taking over a Mayan site with water rides and zoo. And now I'm like, oh, we got to bring Koa here because this show was amazing and the ball game was amazing, and I could see how they were doing it. It was crazy. And then they played this other ball game which was like field hockey-ish with a flaming ball that you had to like hit lift into like a basin, and that was said to be from a different peoples who were further east, like near the desert south of Mexico City. I checked in with a historian about that later, who comes from that land, and she's like, no, 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 no. And then she later sent me a message and was like, actually, yeah, like that's a thing. I was like, okay, cool. And you could see that flaming ball, like we were just moving into the Aries season as the sun, right? Like the sun into the thing. The same thing with the Mayan ball game. And I mean, I had received some of that image of potential cosmology linked to the game from the great John Major Jenkins. May he rest in peace, from his wonderful work, Galactic Alignment. Um, anyway, so the reason why I'm here in this like long aside is that there was this really interesting part in this show, okay, where now like the Spaniards come and they come on their big boat and they come with their horns, okay, because part of the show, which was so amazing, is that there was live music. But there's like 20,000 people in a stadium watching this thing. It was huge. Okay? And so on the side that I was sitting on, there were these like native musicians who were playing drums and flutes, beautiful, and singing. And then once the Spanish came, now there was a whole other band on the other side who had like strings and brass, right? Like, instruments of the old world, right? Actually quite new. Anyway, so they come and there's these battles, and there's this interesting thing that happens is that after the guns win, these crosses go up in the corners of the stage where there are some chetmuls, right? Which is this like Mayan kind of statue, Mesoamerican, I should say, to use a modern term of these peoples in general. Statue is a very kind of sacred statue, and so they put these crosses in them, and I mean the whole thing in some senses feels terrible, okay? But then they go through this bit where there's all these panels laid out on the huge floor of the stadium, and slowly one by one in this really wonderful production, this like song dance, where now the musicians from both sides are playing together and exchanging, and as they flip these panels over, it's the Virgin Mary, and the crowd goes wild. Right? I mean, it's like 20,000 people and all these lighters are up, and sadly I cannot speak much Spanish, but fortunately for gringos like myself, they had subtitles on the like the gigantic scoreboard of this like arena, um, translating what I was hearing on the loudspeaker and part of this like song and narration. And what they said, which was like powerful, was like this was not the ending of a culture. This was the beginning of a new one, of a merged peoples. And there was a lot of celebration of that locally and also in my heart. And you can hear something like that as just like justification for genocide, basically. We need to be careful with that, right? I'm looking at all of this as an outsider. But there was something there to hear and consider, and it really kind of inspired me to come into many of these sacred sites as an outsider, as I have in the past, but with I don't know, a new question in my heart instead of some exclamation point in my mind. So I share all of that because it's in this image, okay? And And what I hadn't seen until now is like this painting by Aloria and David of Ischel, like looking at these like these tiles that were being flipped over, and how like there's this kind of Mother Mary image in Ischel in some ways, especially with her relationship to the moon. You know, there was a time when Julius Schiller like Christianized the constellations in our sky to like try to rub the pagan off of them. And interestingly, Jesus Christ was the sun and Mother Mary was the moon. So I hadn't seen it at the time. I'm like I've spent a lot of time meditating on this beautiful painting by Laurie and David, and I hadn't seen that at the time when they were flipping over these tiles at that show at Eshkeret. But I'm seeing it now. Anyway, what this painting was intended to do was to bring some resolution, at least in the heart of the artists, around this like conquest and genocide or merging question mark. We see morning star Venus here. And I've been seeing some beautiful pictures from a new Facebook friend of Venus above the pyramid of Kukulkan, which is this pyramid, the principal pyramid of Castillo at Chichen Itza in Yucatan in Mexico. But this is the Alhambra, right? And so what the artists are doing here with kind of Ixchel as the guardian is they are merging the geometry of the Alhambra tiles, which is this at the top, into these feathered serpents, right? Who are here like coming together. And there are no words for that besides what I've offered. Like the words that I would follow that with are unnecessary and would only like distract you from the important words, which are those that are in your heart. Like what does that bring you to? Because this Cancer Capricorn like Aries thing, like Gemini Pisces squares, the Gemini Aquarius trines, it's like Uranus at the North Node looking at where we're stuck and how to break through, but saying like, oh, actually be still to receive the vision, then act. Right? Don't just like grab the weapon and run to the revolution without like really considering who you are, what you're fighting against, what you're fighting for, what is the new vision you want to bring in, like be still to act 3 steps backward and then the pole vaulter runs, which I don't really think is how pole vaulters do their thing. So, bring the car back, click, 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 and let it go so it will race. And really, I think at this time in general, tuning into Cancer, hey, what is family? What is home? Cancer, Capricorn, like how do like your own family mannerisms, values, rules, or those of your house or your soul family, wherever you're like, what is the other octave, the outer octave, like of a governing body, to that, and what is the opposition therein, which doesn't have to be, energetically oppositional, right? Like the old word is the diameter. But how in this time can we also set some intentions for feelings and deeps and also like souls coming in? So I meant to spend more time here, but there's been too much time already. So I will kind of quickly describe the astronomy of what astrologers have come to call true black moon Lilith. And it is a dark foci in space of the Earth-Moon relationship. Earth, if we look at Moon orbiting Earth, truly they're like in a mutual dance about the sun. But if we look at this model of Moon orbiting the Earth, well, all orbits are elliptical, not circular. Circles have one center, ellipses have 2 foci. And while this is a very exaggerated view, right, this is the trip. The Moon every month gets very close to Earth, and every month gets very far from Earth. And if we look through this like point in space where there is nothing, it's simply one of the two foci of the Moon Earth relationship. One of them is in the bounds of Earth, not at Earth's center, and it contributes to an interesting wobbling in the Moon Earth thing, which brings the nodes retrograde and all sorts of other amazing astronomical events. But to keep this here, if we look through this dark point in space where no body is, we are directing our gaze towards the apogee where the moon is furthest away, and therefore dimmest, slowest. Whereas at the perigee, and you can see this in a chart with moon opposite true black moon Lilith, that's when moon is brightest, closest, biggest, fastest. So this is a really slow moon. Moon moves on average 13 1/3 degrees per day. And at the time of the new moon, moon will be traveling at 11:49, less than 12 degrees a day, which, take my word for it, is slow moon, okay? But more importantly, I'd say this, is I like to call black moon Lilith far moon Lilith. Okay, so what? For me, the moon is an incarnational device that reflects the one light, that's sun. Sun is our local representative of the one and only light that ever was, is, and will be, the indivisible light of spirit, the circle of spirit. And as that one light comes through, I mean, as Earth orbits, right, like that light changes signs. That's actually a thing of Earth, not of the sun. So Earth is causing these different shapes and expressions archetypally of what that one light can feel like here on the planet in a body. But we cannot get into a body without moon. In this religion, like the moon's role is to deliver sunlight to Earth, just as Diana, we're told, delivered Apollo's birth. And the moon does this by reflecting that one light, not dividing it, that's impossible, reflecting it in a unique way, which will never ever repeat. It's something that I would call a soul, right? Where spirit is the one only thing, the essential thing that we all have. And then soul is like the unique essence of an individual. And so that unique reflection, one, the way that the moon reflects the sunlight, will never ever repeat here into matter, is the embodiment. Why? Because here, in a place with the appearance of time and space, we can grow. And we do this first and foremost by choosing to feel. For feeling opens healing. Healing opens knowing. Our knowing is our growing. Our growth is the growth of the one and only thing, which can't grow because it is everything and won't stop doing so because of miracles like you, the soul, embodied and mattered, to grow. But again, growing comes from knowing, knowing from healing. Healing will not happen unless we choose feeling. And that, of course, is in the principal intention of the Cancer realms. We're asked to choose a path where we know we are safe, held, where we can offer nurturing, safety, and being in that Cancer space. And why do we come here anyway? So with the moon can join the sun, there's a couple things that you might not see unless you learn the astronomy of the chart. So one is with moon can join the black moon. Moon is literally furthest away, slowest. So it's the king tide, the high tides right now, but it's a particularly low one because, well, the highest high tides, the lowest low tides when the moon is new or full. But this is particularly low for the highest high tides, or particularly high for the lowest low tides of the month because the moon is far from Earth. The moon is also out of bounds at this time. We see that in the lunar declination. So you can see here the declination of the moon, 2654. The moon's like more than 3 degrees away from the sun, even though conjoined. Let me show this to you in a map. And this will happen more and more in the years to come as the north lunar node moves towards the equinox point 0 Aries. The moon can go more and more out of bounds. The bounds of the sun are the tropics. When the sun just reached the Tropic of Cancer, the other day, solstice, the sun stopped and turned around. Tropics is tropikos, Greek for turnaround, okay? Well, in the moment of the new moon, here's the sun very close to the Tropic of Cancer because still very close to zero Cancer. But here's the moon. So while they're conjoined in the chart, look, I can push here in Astro Gold's map the zodiacal button, and they're going to be on top of one another. But in Mundo, which also considers the moon's latitude, which is the distance from the ecliptic, this curve, or the mutual declinations of sun and moon, which is their distance from Earth's equator, that's more than 3 degrees. So not only is moon very far from Earth at this new moon, but also in Earth's sky, though we won't see under the beams, very far from the sun. So that also contributes to this, like, she's leaving home or coming back, prodigal son vibe that I mentioned before, or breaking out to come back in, or leaving the family name to actually bring the true family name to this world. All these things that I've talked about before, like centered upon the tension of this Cancer Aries square that has this generosity. Moon at home and sun said to be exalted in Aries, right? Sun living with the moon, being taught how to Cancer, Jupiter living with Mars, being taught how to Aries, but the sun and Jupiter in each other signs of exaltation. So this reception. Oh, fun that here in California this happens in the 12th hour of daylight of a Tuesday. So moon's hour of Mars's day. As I'm speaking about this Cancer Aries thing, that's a local truth, okay? So hopefully in our own strange mystical ways, we found the astro harmonic palette of planets and points and aspect group harmonies and symbolic scenes in this beautiful art by Aloria Weaver and David Heskins, and some of the strange tales that have come forth, and particularly this art created by Who Knows is offering something to see. It's close as moon is to sun, still far away, far from Earth, and still far from sun and Earth skies. And there's a reason why the so-called myths of Lilith have been connected to far moon. And I just want to offer that as an invitation for you to explore. We could speak about it another time. I had thought today about possibly bringing in the chart of Roe versus Wade, where we find Mars conjoined true black moon Lilith opposite Saturn, and also the chart of this recent Supreme Court decision. I don't know that this is the right title for it. SCOTUS overturns Roe versus Wade et al., but it's what I wrote. Where we find, interestingly, there's a strong Saturn alignment also to Lilith here, but by trine. So this is the true black moon Lilith calculation. That same degree that will host the coming Mercury trine Saturn, then Venus trine Saturn. Squares Neptune, and a lot of that religiosity feels true there. But I just wonder about this trine with Saturn. And maybe I can ask, is it trine or is it Saturn? And the answer is both. And there's something in there that's an invitation for our explorations. We've got to, like, while remaining compassionate, allow ourselves, and astrology can help. I have a hard time with it, but allow ourselves to relax, like which side of a thing we are on, if we want to see what the chart has to say, you know? And I think there's a lot of that in this strong Aries-Cancer square at this time. I'm glad that somehow I was brought through art and back to a howler monkey on equinox day, because there is a lot connecting the Aries new moon months ago to this Cancer new moon energetically. I don't want to say a thing like that without having just a quick look at those charts, and I'll leave that to you to see and decode as well. So let's get this Cancer new moon here and look back to the new moon from some 4 months ago now. And here's that Aries new moon. Wheels within wheels, my friends. Who is your family? Who is your soul family? What are your roots? What is the soil from which you have sprouted, in which you were planted? Was it rich with nutrients? Is it dry? Are you growing away from or growing out of? What is your culture? What is your cult? I, by the way, put up a long transmission like this, even longer, and actually a class from my School of Earth Astrology. Let me just say a thing about that, by the way. If you make your way to GeminiBrett.com, you will find an offerings page. By the way, I haven't updated it for a bit, but some old teachings, including that shouldn't be there, including hearing the aspects, which I was kind of first coming into, playing with Astro Harmony for learning more about charts and doing chart songs. This is dated, but still probably my best work, by the way, Washington Deciphered. You can see an update of that at this Turning of the Ages video too. Encourage you to check that out if you like my works. A beautiful song here, by the way, which can really serve the intention of the global invitation of this Cancer new moon as well, directions. But here at the courses page, you can find a link to Astronomy for Astrologers, but also my School of Earth Astrology, which certainly has a lot of astronomy, sacred number, geometry, musical harmony in it, because this is the old way. I'm teaching much modern and much classical, traditional astrology. And we've been at it for a while. We call this the golden year, which actually started with Capricorn in January, so we're halfway through. So there's a lot of videos up there that you could catch up on. But new students are joining all the time, and certainly, like, you don't have to have seen all the videos before the one this Sunday to watch this Sunday's class and on the Thema Mundi and the kind of origin of the system of domiciles and rulership, and I'll start introducing essential dignity and aspect theory in the school this week. So every month we have a sacred geometry class. So I'll be teaching sevenness and sevens coming up, and 2 monthly classes. The one before in this month was Cancer and the soul of the moon. And the one coming up is on Thema Mundi. So every month we do an archetype, we do a sacred geometry class, and we also do a fundamentals, right? Like a fundamental class. So I've this link is kind of hidden, but now you know. So GeminiBrett.com/2022 Moon Songs. If you want to get on my site to this page, or you can just search Eric Deutsch Bandcamp to find your way here. And you can listen to all 13 of our new moon songs for the year there if you'd like. May they be vehicles for your own inner expansion and discovery. We're going to listen to 6/28/22. That's today. Cancer new moon on the way out. And I'll just invite you to plant some seeds of your intention. Who is your soul fam? And the School of Astrology is very much a place for a family of starry seekers. So if you're looking for one, come join us. Right. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Oh, right. The whole reason why I wanted to say that is I actually chose to share the recent Cancer and Soul of the Moon class from the School of Astrology. It was not short, but it was a transmission that I enjoyed, and I hope you will too. You can find that at my YouTube page. So it's Gemini Brett, or maybe it's more than, I think it's More Than Astrology, my old business name. But if you search my name at YouTube, you'll find your way to my page. And recently in this month, I shared the School of Astrology transmission on the archetype of Cancer and the soul of the moon, where I go a little bit deeper. So if you're looking for some more, oh, fuel, water fuel for your Cancer journeys this month, I invite you to play there. Would love to know in the comments of this video, wherever you're watching it. Maybe you're watching this at the School of Astrology, because I will be posting this in your bonus class section on your course page there. Or if you're watching this on YouTube or elsewhere, would love to hear how this resonates with you. I would love to hear any wisdom you can extend, any invitations you'd love to offer. And I would love to hear what this song conjures up for you. So we'll tune now into the beautiful Steinway grand piano of the master musician Eric Deutsch, who I'm so blessed to have a dear friendship with in this opportunity, this venture to explore astral harmony together. Again, if you want to hear a song of your birth chart, geminibrett.com/sessions Song of the Soul. It would be our great honor to do so, to create this for you. I will create astrology notes, turn them into harmony, send them to Eric, and he will make the magic that he makes, like this song that you are about to hear. So let me just pull it up. We'll listen to it in full. It is 7 minutes and 17 seconds long. I will put the chart up on the screen, but this is probably better received with your eyes closed. Thanks for spending some time with me here today, friends. This is your Astrolonaut Gemini Brett signing off. I will see you in space.